So my name's Adam Barn. I'm the owner of Hot Sauce Design Development, one of the sponsors here. And this is basically do it for yourself, how to make it a solo Drupal shop. So basically how to get rich and quick with Drupal. No, not really. You don't, this isn't going to be super Drupal-y. It's going to be more general business, independent, solo contractor sort of thing. I grew up in Tallahassee, but I live in Tampa and I was born there. And we have some Tampa people here, which is nice. Thank you, guys. I built my first website in 1997. I started with Drupal in 2009. So I've been here for a while. This is my 7th DrupalCamp. Or 8th maybe. I'm basically a front-end developer and site builder, so I do the graphical side of things. I build the theming for Drupal primarily, and I work with building configurations and installing modules, all that sort of stuff. Basically everything except for writing code for modules. Happily married for almost 10 years and proud owner of 3 cats. And an almost 5-year-old. Oh, that my wife would be happy that he got more A's than the cats. That's good. Developer background. So I started in 1997. When I was 14, I had a job. This is like the ultimate job for a 14-year-old, where I would review video games from a company that would buy them for me. So all I had to do was make a website and write articles for them. Back then, did HTML and learned it by hand with Notepad or Netscape Gold or Hot Dog or any of those programs from a long, long time ago. Back with spacer GIFs and GIFs or whatever that argument is, and table layouts for everything when you had the 640 by 480 screen. 2001 to 2004, I worked for the same company doing professional websites, not just writing video game reviews, writing HTML by hand and using Cold Fusion. I'm sorry. So that was, that was a good introduction to some of the development stuff that I did. That was basically what I was getting through college and that sort of stuff. After college, or during college and after college, I kind of got away from tech and worked in retail. And when I graduated, I moved back down to Tampa from Tallahassee, went to Florida State, woohoo! And then moved to Tampa and worked in retail, selling blinds of all things for Blinds to Go, which is custom-made blinds. You need blinds in 3 to 5 days. They're your company. So the 2008 and 2009, I was looking for something else to do, so I found a job working for a company called IDARC Media, which basically did the websites for phone books. So the Verizon phone book, you could buy an ad in a phone book, and you would get a website with it. So we had WYSIWYG tools that we would use building in Internet Explorer 6 that you would drag and drop and make the websites like that. I realized fairly early on that really wasn't going anywhere as a career because you're just stuck doing that sort of thing. So in phone books, those things that get recycled every year. So I talked to a friend of mine who I used to work with previously, named Mark Ray, and he had his own company called Sprocket, and he needed a developer, or he needed a front-end design person. So I started working for him, for his company for about a year, and then he got another job with someone else. It was just he and I, and so he basically handed all of his clients over to me, and I started Hot Sauce in 2010. So when I was looking to get a job, I was like, WTF is Drupal, because I didn't know. I applied for a job for a company that was doing Joomla at the time, and I realized I was very, very far behind in the web in terms of what was out there. So I got into, Mark helped me learn what Drupal is. I basically started as a designer. He would have me do designs in Photoshop and slice and dice it all up, and then he would teach me Drupal as I went along. And then when he got his other job, I basically took over from Sprocket and took over all of his clients. It was a pretty gradual transition. Like, he would help me out with the clients and getting everything set up at first, so they introduced me to all of them, so they knew who I was. And to this day, I still have probably out of a dozen, probably 4 or 5 of them are still clients, which I'll get to that a little bit. And I launched Hot Sauce in 2010. So what I'm going to kind of talk about here is some of the different just key topics to think about, like setting up your own shop, how to keep the lights on, making money, and then just general tips and stuff. So, the first thing is knowing your skill set. So you have to really know, if you're starting your own company, what you're doing. Like, what do you do? Are you front end? Are you a site builder? Are you a programmer? It really helps you determine how you're going to hang your shingle out to determine what type of skills you can offer to people. The temptation is, of course, always to try to do everything yourself when you're starting out. But you have to understand that you do have limitations, because you're not only, when you're running your own shop, you're not only doing this website building, but you're also having to contact clients, have meetings, do proposals, do if depending on where your clients are, traveling to go meet them, that sort of stuff. So you have to know your limitations about, if you're trying to do everything all at once, that's going to be a little intense. But the big thing I've found is that you should use your own experience career-wise for your own benefit. So like I said, I worked in retail for a while. And part of that was interacting face-to-face with people. People would come in and complain about something, so you'd have to be able to know how to troubleshoot something and talk to different types of people working, that would come in and talk to you. Some people are fine with just getting a refund or whatever. You have to be able to communicate people on different levels. So that was an experience I had already had. I had worked, working as an independent person before. I had worked in a larger corporation organization before. So I had a lot of background, I think, and I was lucky for that, to have different, varied experiences with different types of people and in situations. So, it wasn't like I'm just a computer person sitting here doing all this stuff. I kind of had a little bit more background to do from. And everybody has their own different careers and experiences. So you have to kind of just think back about your skills that you learned from those other places and see if you can use them for your own setup. And of course, you have to be prepared to work if you're going to be your own independent person, because at the end of the day, it's you. There's nobody else. You can't delegate it to somebody necessarily. You don't have a boss. And there's benefits to all that, which we'll get to. But you have to be prepared to work. You're going to work a lot. You're going to work, morning to night, and you'll probably work weekends. The only holidays you'll take off will be like Christmas or Easter, that sort of thing. You're going to be working a lot, especially when you're first starting out. The other thing to think about is you have to kind of dot your I's and cross your T's when you're starting as an independent person. You need to build a web presence for yourself. You need to have a website which you can use to showcase sites that you've built or modules that you've created or designs that you've done. But you also have to have social media accounts. So you have to have Facebook, Twitter, an Instagram, I guess, a Snapchat, whatever the hell the kids are into these days. You also have to think about taking care of yourself and your family. A lot of times, a lot of us have worked for larger companies that offer health insurance. When you're an independent contractor, as the law stands right now, you have to have your own insurance. So you have to be out there and getting Obamacare or Trump care, whatever the hell it's called. And you have to take care of yourself and your family if you have kids or pets or spouse, that sort of thing. You have to look at your situation, see where you can figure out to get, make sure that you have insurance, that you're doing all that. You do have to get your situation straight with taxes too. And this depends on what your level of commitment and concern is with this sort of stuff. Hot Sauce is an LLC, which means I have a tax ID number. The benefit of having an LLC or an incorporation is if you screw up royally and someone sues you, they sue the company. They don't sue you personally. If you're an independent person and you do a job and you screw up, they can sue you and they can take everything that you got. They can take your house, your car, any savings, any of that sort of stuff. You probably heard commercials for those sort of companies that offer the incorporation services. It's an initial fee and setup. I think when I set up it was about $500 originally, but you pay a license every year. It's like $100 and something bucks, and that gives you protection from if something goes wrong. Especially if you start hiring employees, that sort of thing. You have to worry about that sort of stuff. You also, with your taxes, you can, which I'll get into some of the benefits and drawbacks of the tax side of this. You have to file taxes, so you can do it. I pay quarterly. You can pay yourself. You basically self-report your own taxes, how much you think you made. My advice, and this is maybe want to talk to an accountant about that, but if I get $100, I put 25 of that aside straight for taxes and don't touch it. Then I use that money when I pay those estimated taxes at the end of the year or throughout the year, and then I just send in all that money that I've put aside. That money goes to that I have usually overpaid, but I get a nice refund at the end of the year because I've kept straight with everything, and then it's like this extra money that you get that you can use to use the next year. So you don't have to. Sorry, I wasn't going to try to make it too political, but you want to make sure that you do think about that sort of stuff because it is important, and it's something that if you don't, you can get yourself personally and you just add added stress to yourself. Setting a routine and sticking with it. So this is really hard for some people, and but it just depends on how you work and how you are as a person. For me, it's keep consistent hours. So if you work from home, I like to get up, I take a shower, I change my clothes, I go to work in my office, which is just a different room in the house. Some people like to stay in their pajamas, drink their coffee, kind of gradually work into the day. I set hours, so I say, okay, I'm working from 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or whatever that day. It's a routine, so you're still working on a schedule that you're setting for yourself, but it keeps you consistent. It also helps because it makes it, you're working with businesses and organizations. They have set hours. Not everybody's a contractor like you. Not everybody's independent like you. So you have to understand that you have to be available for business hours for people to talk to. If you wake up at 12 o'clock and you work until 2 a.m., you're going to miss some times there to talk to clients. So I find it's easy to have a routine and keep everything straight like that. You also want to be prompt and professional with people that you're dealing with. I mean, this is kind of common sense, but you want to get back to clients if they email you and ask you questions as soon as you can, or phone calls, that sort of thing. And you want to be professional about it because you are a business. You're selling yourself, and so you need to represent who you are to them. So I have somehow managed to keep inbox 0 by the end of the day every day. So I have no emails in my inbox. I've taken care of everything. If I can't take care of it that day, it's in a little pinned Gmail starred folder that I take care of first thing the next morning. But 95% of the time I walk away every day with no outstanding emails because I respond to people, and my clients love that. If they have a change or something, I get back to them within 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on what's going on, obviously. But at least with an update of what's the status is.
And you can't overstate that enough. That your clients definitely take notice when you're prompt.
Yes, yeah, they do. They really appreciate it because sometimes it's like you send an email, they send you an email, you process it, and you take care of it in 2 seconds, and it's like, wow, great. This person is
with or not.
Yeah.
It also makes them get back to your inquiries a lot faster too.
Correct. Yes, it's a two-way street. So if you have questions for them, they'll hopefully get back to you sooner because you're getting back to them sooner.
I have a question. How do you balance the time between talking to clients versus actually working with code?
That's the $64,000 question. You have to kind of just set a schedule, set a routine, have a Google Calendar or whatever, keep a plan, and then you just set aside, you say, okay, I'm going to work this amount of time on this project. And if you have to get back to clients, you say, let me take care of this tomorrow for you. As long as you're responding to them and giving them information about when their issue is going to be dealt with, most people are fine with that, assuming it's a reasonable sort of thing. The other side of this is you do have to take advantage of working for yourself. So by that I mean you're working for yourself. You can go take a 2-hour lunch if you want to. You can go to don't go to the movies in the middle of the day, but you could take a long weekend if you have that option. You know your own schedule, you know your own workload. So if you're able to, especially if you have a spouse or kids or something, I have my wife and I, we have annual passes to Disney. So sometimes she's like, hey, can you take this day off to go to Disney with us? As long as I'm scheduling and thinking about it ahead of time, sure, why not? I have no boss. I can go do what I need to do. And that's one of the really great advantages of this because you have to report to yourself, and as long as you can hold yourself accountable, you're able to get, take that advantage. One thing she always says to me, my wife always says, is there are no internet emergencies. So, you do have to be able to turn it off sometimes because when you are working from home or, going to a coffee shop or whatever, you still have to set, you're always working. You always have your email, you're always checking your phone, you're always doing this or that. Sometimes that sort of stuff can wait. Unless your client's website is down or not working or there's some critical problem that needs to be addressed, there's not really emergencies that can't wait till tomorrow. Every other business, schedules things. There's things that happen that can be done the next day. If you can't get to it that day, that's okay. It's hard when you start working for yourself because you have that mentality that I have to get this done, no one else is going to do it. But you have to kind of fight that urge sometimes and realize that you can go and take a night, take a day, do whatever you need to do, because there's no emergencies that can't wait as long as you're communicating things to the user, to the client. Organize yourself, and this is really important for these things. Keep track of everything. When I was talking about taxes, if you're a self-employed person, you can take half of your cell phone bill. You can take, if you're working from home, you can take the square footage of the room that you're working from as office space and claim that as a deduction. You can take your energy bill for the same amount of space for your room as a deduction. You can take miles that you travel to go back and forth. You can get 50 cents a mile, in Florida at least, for the miles that you travel to go see clients. If you keep track, if you go out to lunch with a client or you go to a meetup and you're buying food there, you can take that as a deduction. You take half of that money as a deduction. So if you organize yourself and you keep track of these things, it's going to benefit you a lot because it's going to be basically free money that you're getting back. You're spending some money on this stuff or your time, but just by being in that physical place doing your work, you're making some money back for doing things that you have to do. If you buy software, if you buy computer equipment, you can claim all of those things as tax deductions. And as long as you keep track of it and have receipts, and I just have an envelope I stick my receipts into every time I buy something, and at the end of the year I just pull them back out and track it all, give it to the accountant or whatever, you're good. Which is kind of the other side of this too, is seek professional help. When you are running a business, there are more limitations because, especially if you're an LLC or independent, because you don't pay Social Security tax, but you pay self-employment tax, and so it's a good idea to get an accountant, not necessarily H&R Block, but just find like a local accountant, someone who you know or might know. Usually a smaller company is better, I find. I have a lady who's the mother of a friend of my sister-in-law, and she does my taxes, and she does really well. So seeking professional help with this sort of stuff, getting people who are professionals in other fields to help you out is going to help you in the long run. If you're going to have to sit down there, nobody wants to do taxes. No one wants to sit there for weeks on end and compile everything. Take it all to account, pay them to do it, and then you can you'll reap the benefits of that because it's saving you time to do work and do other things.
Are you making use of things like Neat or anything like that?
I'm sorry?
Are you making use of Neat?
No.
Scanning all the receipts and...
No, I probably should. Most of it's like from Amazon or like a web license or something that you're buying like from a site or something, but I should probably do that. That's a good...
Well, that goes back to the routine thing too. I mean, because I kind of do the same thing. We throw all of our receipts like every week into an envelope. But every Friday, we sit down with QuickBooks or Quicken, and we input everything, and then if we don't need the receipt, we toss it. If we need it, we keep it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But jokes aside, seeking professional help. Your spouses don't want to hear your frustrations with your clients. Go talk to someone else.
The other thing with this is you want to keep learning. So this is also always a challenge because you're running a business, you're talking to clients, you're coding, you're doing this and that, but you also have a set of skills that when you start the business that unless you keep learning and keep evolving and keep testing new things are going to become stale and not marketable anymore. So you have to find time to learn, watch a video, listen to a podcast, read a book, that sort of thing. Keep learning new skills, check out new developers, that sort of thing. Just all sorts of new stuff out there all the time, and it's if you set some of your time aside to be dedicated to learning, it's going to help you keep growing your skills, and you may find yourself to be better. I started out mostly just doing designs in Photoshop, but through learning CSS and Sass and other tools, I actually have a girl who I outsource the designs to now, and I do the theming side. I don't like to sit there in Photoshop for 6 hours to build a homepage, whereas I can have someone else do that, and I much more enjoy the theming coding side of it, or the CSS and Sass and that sort of stuff. So, but if I hadn't learned Sass or hadn't learned CSS better, I wouldn't have known that was what I enjoyed the most about what I do. So, keeping the lights on. So, you set your company, you're organized, and then how are you going to make money? So, knowing what to charge is obviously the first thing. The thing to keep in mind is Drupal is an in-demand skill. It really is. One of the biggest things between Drupal and WordPress is that WordPress, there's a million developers out there doing WordPress. There's a lot of competition from overseas, and WordPress you have to pay for a lot of the modules. Drupal has a very tight-knit community, has the same flexibility and even better, I think, than WordPress. And so someone who can build you come to, Drupal is going to be a skill that's going to be marketable because of all of what it does. I sell it to clients as it's kind of like Legos. You start out with one thing, and you can build something else onto it and expand it. They're not going to sit, if you come to them with that sort of approach and give them that mentality of, something is going to, this can get better, we can make it better and better and better. It's going to be easier than trying to sell the idea of, and this is just my opinion, but of WordPress is like, well, it starts out as a blog, and then we kind of add this and this and this to it, and that doesn't really connect to people in terms of what they would need it to do. In terms of what you would want to charge, that's going to depend on the market. And your experience, your level of experience. I probably undercharge right now, but I charge people $80 an hour for most things. That's for design or development. If you have a lot of experience, you probably could get up to $100, $120 an hour, depending on what you're doing. If you're a programmer, you could probably get more. If you're just front-end design, you might be able to just focus on doing that sort of thing. It's going to depend on where you live, the market, who you're talking to with clients and that sort of thing. But like I said, you're selling yourself as well as Drupal with this. So you're trying to make yourself appear as a company. You're selling yourself as a business, but you're also selling this tools that you use, which is Drupal. So when you emphasize to people that Drupal is free, that there's no cost for upgrades and things like that. You're not, especially compared to like WordPress or something else where you have to buy modules all the time and that sort of thing. And the Drupal is secure. It has a dedicated security team. It's being used by the Grammys. The White House website is still, unfortunately, in Drupal. You have all sorts of big, large organizations that you can use Drupal as a tool to sell it. You can say, look, these organizations, these companies are doing it, and then you can find local companies and say, they're doing it too, especially if you have other clients. Clients like to see other clients that you've worked with, the work that you've done. So you're basically selling Drupal and the tools that the value of what Drupal can offer to people. You do have to be flexible with clients in terms of pricing. I think that some people like the fixed cost approach, which is always going to get us all in trouble sometimes, but you give them a proposal of, it's going to be $5,000 for this. And then they say, okay, that's great. Or you can say it's going to be this many hours, I think, but it might be this or more, less or more. You have some flexibility there. You have to be kind of flexible with the different clients in terms of what their price range might be. So you might have to sell them as a fixed cost and then say that if there's anything else, we'll charge this hourly rate to fix it. Or you can say, it's going to be fixed, just hourly, depending on what it is, the work that you're doing. But you have to be flexible with that and understand that you can't just have a fixed price sheet for everything. You have to kind of talk about each project as its own. The other thing to do is to use the margins of your work as you can. So a lot of my clients, I host their website. And they're organizations. They're not huge organizations, but I charge them $40 a month for hosting for the site. I have about 20-something sites on there. And I pay, so that works out to $700, $800 a month of hosting that I would get. I only pay $300 for hosting for the server that I have. So I'm making money on hosting. And when you start talking, especially with businesses, $40 a month is like nothing, especially if they're big enough to have a budget, if they're big enough to have more than one or two companies. So this is a margin that you can kind of use to make some money. The flip side of this is that I don't charge people necessarily for tiny little changes. So if you're building a site in Drupal and someone says, hey, I need to change the bio of this person, I just have them email it to me. I go in there and fix it. It takes 5 minutes for me. It's worth it to me to do those sort of things because then you don't have, it's not worth the time to do the work, send them an invoice, check your mailbox or check for the check. And if they haven't paid you, hassle them for that for something that took you 10 minutes to do. The benefit of this too is that they're kind of getting they're getting free support basically for that hosting charge that they're paying for. And this doesn't work with everybody. Not all my clients are hosted by me, and some clients I do charge for. What I usually say is, if I need to have, if it's going to take longer than this amount of time, I'm going to tell you ahead of time before I bill you for it. People are fine with that. They want to know exactly what they're going to be charged, and if you don't charge them for some little fix, they love that you did it free, they love that you did it fast, and they're happy, and then they'll keep coming back for more stuff. So, what clients to strive for or not? I've been doing this for 7 years, and the thing that I've learned the most, cheapest is as cheapest does. So the people who want the cheapest website possible tend to be the biggest pains in the ass. They don't want to pay. They want you to fix everything immediately. and they are going to hassle you about this or that, and it's not going to lead to anything but frustration for you. The problem, of course, is that you don't know who's cheap and who's not when you start getting it. I've been lucky, and I completely am credit this, of not having to chase work. So I'm not out there bidding for the lowest price on projects. It's hard when you start out because you need work and you need stuff to do, and so you may have to bite the bullet and do that some. But what you have to do is just realize that, step back and look every now and then and say, am I really underselling myself? Am I really underselling the product that I have? Because am I just going after cheap stuff and just doing a bunch? Because you can make money on it by doing a bunch of them, but that can get tedious too. The other thing is to find a niche or niche, however you say it, if you can. So a lot of my clients are nonprofit organizations. They're not big nonprofits, but they're companies from Tallahassee. Like I have the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence. They're an organization that coordinates all of the domestic violence centers in Florida. They're my biggest client. They love me. I do lots of stuff for them. I have another client, Florida Council Against Sexual Violence. They also help with the sexual violence centers. I don't do everything with violence, I promise. But they have, these are nonprofits that they have a budget, and because they get donations, they get grants, they get sort of things. So they don't want some sort of, 2-page website, but you're not doing Microsoft's website, you're not doing, Apple. So I have a niche of like small to medium-sized businesses that I do work for. I've gotten other of those organizations to refer me to other clients, I got clients that way by just working with clients that they work with. So they say, oh, hey, Hot Sauce is great. He can help you build a great website. Go talk to them. I've had people who have left an organization to another organization contact me to do that new organization's website. So it's like you find a niche of people, and that's the other thing I'm going to get to is referrals. So if you do a great job on a client and they like your work, ask them for referrals. Say, especially if it's an industry or an organization system, say, hey, do you know of any domestic violence centers that might need new websites? Do you know of any other, smaller businesses in your organization that might need a website? You don't push it. Just say, hey, I'm out there. If you've satisfied them, if you've done a great job, you've been, at their price level, they're happy with you. It's not an unfair thing to ask. You don't bother them with it, but you just say, hey, do you know anybody who might need some work? I'm available, that sort of thing. And you'd be surprised. You'll get people, if they're happy, you'll find that they will refer you. It may not lead to anything, but you might get some big work out of it. You also have to kind of network yourself outside of your comfort zone. It goes back to being you're selling yourself as a business. So that means, I don't do this, but I know people who do. Join business organizations in your town, in your community. Join, Rotary or any of those, smaller organizations. There's probably startup organizations where you live. Just pick other people who are doing their own thing. Network outside your comfort zone. Go to these things. Don't just live in the Drupal sphere. Go to these things and talk to people, because you might find someone at a PHP meetup that needs a front-end developer. They might need someone, might find at a design thing, you might need someone who needs a coder. You can find people that aren't necessarily in what you do as your field, but they could help you. You could find work that way. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. So this is kind of self-explanatory, but when you're talking to clients with a project, be realistic with your time frames of how long you think it's going to really take. People want to be informed. They want to know what's going on. They want to know, if it's going to take you a little bit longer, as long as you're telling them ahead of time, it's going to take me this much time, most people are understanding, most people are flexible about that. If they just send you an email and say, I need to fix this, and you don't get back to them for 3 weeks, you're not going to have that person as a client for very long. So you want to make sure that you keep clients in the know, and you want to make sure too that you don't promise, I'm going to rewrite Drupal core and I'm going to make it just for you, and then it's like, well, I didn't actually do that. That's obviously a problem. But you can look for ways to overachieve without killing yourself. So if you see that they've only done, if you're doing a mock-up for someone and they've only asked for the home page and the About Us page, and then you do the contact page for them for free. People like those little things. They don't realize that they're not going to necessarily say something to you, but those are things that may not take you that long, but it makes it look better for you because you're offering more value to them from what you've actually promised them. Same thing with what I do for support. So if I fix things for people and don't bill them for it for a 5-minute fix or 2-minute fix for me, people like that. It's a way to achieve overachieve for them in their eyes, but it's not really costing you anything other than a couple minutes. You also have to be afraid don't be afraid to say no to people with a project, especially if you're in the middle of a project and you start getting scope creep. Things that like, oh, well, we love how this is all built, but we need to add this whole other section. Don't be afraid to say no to that. Say, well, I can do that, but we're going to have to adjust the price to this. Or, let's let's finish what we have first, and let's do that as a phase 2 sort of thing. That, again, you're dealing with businesses, you're dealing with professionals, you're dealing with organizations, most of the time, hopefully, that are going to be, so don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to, just tell people that I'll get to that, we can do that later, because you're dealing with professionals, they're used to adjustments of time frames, adjustments of projects, adjustments of budgets. You also have to understand that you have to accept rejection when you're working for yourself. You won't get every job that you send a proposal for. You may send a proposal to someone and not hear back ever. You may hear back from them and say, well, we decided to go with someone else. You can't get upset about that. There's always work out there. You will have clients that will leave. It may not be you. It may not be anything that you've done. It may be something that you did that they never tell you. People don't always communicate that sort of stuff. They may get a new CEO who wants to build the website this way. I'll give you an example. I did a website for two Catholic schools. They are overseen by a diocese, like a school board sort of thing. The diocese decided that all the websites needed to be on this other system. I suddenly lost 2 clients because they had no choice but to move to another system. That sucks, but it happens. You can't always control that. You can do your best to keep people happy, to do the work for them, and keep your name out there in front of them so that they always know, hey, if we do need a new site, or we really want to stay with Adam or Hot Sauce because they're really good, that will help, but you can't always, clients will leave, basically. And it's not usually a personal thing. Unless you've really burned a bridge with someone, it's all business. So if someone says they don't want you to do the work, they don't want you for the project, or they're leaving for this or that reason, it's not because of you personally. It's not the work that you do. And some people have a hard time accepting that because you are your business, you are you, and it's not that they're slamming you personally, they're just making a business decision or an organization decision, or the decision was made above their pay grade. So it's not that they're anything against you necessarily, unless you've started some sort of fight with a client, which is a whole other problem. But it's not personal, so you have to just understand that. The other thing with this, and this is probably the hardest thing about running your own business, is if you're not enjoying doing it, if you're not enjoying the work that you do, if you're not enjoying being in that, running your own business, try to fix it. Try to see if there's ways to make yourself happier. Do you need to scale back? Do you need to hire another person if possible? Do you need to go get a job with someone else? Is it just not working for you? You have to try to fix that, because you still have to keep yourself, you have to take care of yourself and your spouse, your kids, because if you're not happy, they're not going to be happy, because you're going to vent on them and you're going to be miserable and I can't do this or that because I'm too busy, whatever. And it happens, but you always have to kind of reevaluate it. Is this really the right thing for me to do? So, kind of just more in general, know what you don't know when you're working. So that means seek out help for something if you're not sure how to do it. Go to your local Drupal meetups. Look on job boards. Use your Twitter resources. Use people you follow. Look out there for resources and other people out there who can help you find what you need to know. That means finding other people for helping you finish up the project. If you need something and if you need a custom module, I talked to Sean over here from C3 Web Services. If I need a custom module for something, because I don't write the code, so I know, and I met Sean through the Drupal meetup. One of the best projects I worked on was with the city of Tampa. They came to our Tampa Drupal meetup, and we got talking, and then they said, oh, we need a new website, so I started working on that project. So you meet people at meetups. You've got to be out there and socialize and get to know people. If you do end up hiring people, make sure that you delegate to them exactly what the project is, especially if you get a partner working with something, because you have to, it's still your business, so you still have to run it and say, you need to do this, I need to do this. If you start trying to do someone else's job for them, they're going to resent that and not want to work with you. If you're trying to do too much, it's just going to be, overwhelming. And if you're hiring someone to build something for you, and they give it to you and it's happening, and they give it to you and they complete it, make sure you understand how it works. Make sure to ask questions, and then ask more questions about what it is that it does. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to have someone do this work for you and you're going to give it to a client, that may be great, but then 3 years from now, that person may not be around if something breaks or you have a question. So it helps to understand how something really is set up that you paid someone to build for you. And especially if it's a best practice or it's a not best practice. I've had that happen before where I hired someone to build something and he basically hacked Drupal to get it to work, which was a bad idea. When you do work with other contractors, you know, and they say, oh, it's going to take a long time to do this, you know, or I'm not going to meet this deadline, whatever. You can empathize with them because you're self-employed as well. But you have to be firm too. You know, you're paying them to do a job, you're a business, and you're speaking for your client. So you have to really be, you know, balance that relationship of, is this work going to be done in time, or are you going to have to, you know, push them a little bit harder or say, well, we have to get this done, and, you know, do what you can to make sure that you empathize with them of, oh, your dog died, I'm sorry, but I still kind of need this, because it does happen. People have lives, but they still have, you know, responsibilities too. The other thing you can do, and I take full advantage of this, is being a contractor. So contract employment is your friend, basically. I had a really great Arrested Development joke in here, but it's not working on the slide, so oh well. Contractor work means that you're working for someone else, some other company is hiring you to do work. And by that I mean, I did work for Big Couch and Achieve, where they would hire me to do a theme of a website. I can't claim that as my work, but I still learn skills doing that. It works good for clients because they can have a resource they can go to. They don't have to hire an employee to be a themer or a developer. They can go to you and pay you as a contractor, and you get a 1099 at the end of the year from them. And it works for you because you learn skills. The downside, of course, obviously, is you can't always claim it as your work. I did work for the city of Tampa, but it's not my site. I can't claim that I did. I did most of the front-end design stuff, but it's not my site. It was a Big Couch Achieve project. You know, you live with that, but it still is tools that, and most times if you're working with companies as contractors, you can reasonably say to them, hey, I'm not going to claim this as mine, but can I mention that I did this work? And they're usually fine with that sort of stuff. If you are a contractor, though, you do have to clarify boundaries and expectations.
Yep. Just
like scope creep, you know, if they're paying you $2,000 to do this, and then they start throwing more and more things onto you, you have to say no. You have to say, this is not what we agreed to. We need to adjust the PO. We need to adjust however you're getting paid to make sure that you're getting treated fairly. So you have to make sure those are clear because, again, you're dealing with a business. They're hiring you as a business, so they're not going to, otherwise they'll take full advantage of that and just ride you into the ground until you're just burnt out completely. And that's the other part of this, is if it doesn't work and you're doing contract work for somebody, walk away. You know, you are a business, they're a business, our business relationship is over. It's done, and you don't have to, you know, feel bad about it. It might hurt you financially, but if you're just getting abused or it's just not being treated right, then what's the point of being your own company, you know, if you can't make those decisions? The other side of this is we're all trying to make a buck, so we're all trying to get paid too. So that means if you hire somebody else as a contractor, pay them. If you're doing work for someone, you know, if you have bills coming in for other things that you're doing, pay those bills. It may be hard, especially when you're first starting out, but it's really important because, especially if you're working with other individuals or other small teams, they need that money too. They have, you know, they're trying to keep the lights on too. They have dogs and cats and kids to feed. The other thing that you can do is you can reevaluate your own personal setup for your organization every 6 months. So I was paying hosting for a server. It was costing me like $700 a month. And it got to the point where all that money I was making on hosting, margin-wise, was now negative. I reevaluated my setup because I had the server for 3 or 4 years. I didn't need it. I never really did anything with it. I just kept expanding it as I needed to. But I found a cheaper system for like half the price. So that got me back my margins. I'm saving money every month. But even though I could claim some of that as a deduction for taxes, you know, if I hadn't reevaluated that setup, I'd just be throwing money away for no reason. The other thing too, no one works for exposure. No one works for free. If someone says, "Oh, well, I'll just put your work on our website, you know, for doing this, and we're not going to pay you, but we're just going to, you know, thanks for this great logo, but we just wanted to do it for exposure." Nobody does that. And if someone tries to do that to you, run away screaming, because that's someone who's trying to take advantage of something for free. Because especially in the design world or even the programming world, where people don't necessarily understand how something works or something gets to the finished product, they don't respect it. It's not always the case. There's it's come a long way since when I first started, but it's out there. There's people who just think that, oh, you're just playing around in Photoshop. Oh, you're just you're writing 3 lines of code and you're playing Xbox all day. No, it's not. We're professionals. We do work. You're paying us for this work. We're not going to do this for free. And lastly, none of us know what we're doing. None of us. We've all made mistakes. I've had clients who I charge them $1,000 or $2,000 for a website, and I end up probably putting in $5,000 worth of time on it. You make a mistake, it happens. All you can do is plan as best as you can. You just try to think ahead of time. Once you start doing projects for yourself and you get your schedule and your routine going, you really can figure out how long is this really going to take me to do, and then you can adjust your time for that. So you plan as best you can, so that if you get a project that is quick and easy, you can get that done. And if that other project is going to take longer, and you didn't charge as much for it, it might balance out because you got this one done real quick and you got a good amount of money for that, but then the other one you didn't, sort of thing. So it might balance out, or you can just make sure you just plan accordingly. The other thing too is having downtime is not bad. I kind of flipped out at the end of last year because all my clients kind of were satisfied for the year. They didn't have their work. They spent all their money for the year. And from like November to December, I didn't really have much to do day to day. I mean, I had little emails and things coming in, but I didn't have a lot to do. And that was the first time in 6 years that had happened. So I was kind of flipping out. But having downtime is not always bad. You can rest and relax. You can learn things. You can go spend more time with your family, or take up a hobby, do that sort of stuff. Have other interests besides your work. So having downtime isn't always bad. The key, of course, is make sure that downtime doesn't become permanent downtime where you just are not working because you're not doing anything. So I apologize for all of the technical issues, but did you guys have any questions or anything?
I'm just curious, how big is your book of business? How many clients do you manage at one particular,
I probably have 7 or 8 active clients, and I have probably another 10 clients that I hear from every few months, and then I have a couple clients that I just host their website, and they might send me something every year. That's it.
Are you comfortable with that number? What would be?
Yeah, I'm not trying to conquer the world, and that's the other thing of this too, is you want to try to set expectations for yourself. If you're trying to get rich, you're going to have to work really hard to do that, and you're going to have to hire more people, and it's going to grow business beyond my own experience that I could recommend tips for. But I'm happy working for myself. I make a good living for myself. I'm married, so I have extra income from my spouse, but I'm comfortable. I'm not trying to conquer the world. I'm not trying to be a huge company. I'm not trying to get on the stock market. I'm just trying to pay enough for myself, have a comfortable lifestyle, and be done with that. So,
can I ask just kind of a follow-up question? How many of us in the room are working as a solo shop right now?
How many people came here because they want to?
I'm kind of doing both. Like I work full-time, a full-time job, and I'm getting into part-time.
Yeah.
Working for myself.
Well, that's the thing. That's a good way to transition. Yeah, that's a good way to transition. You can start out, doing stuff on the nights and weekends and building up a business. Then it becomes a point where you say, this is taking up way more of my time than the other thing. So that's when you leave and do that.
I'm kind of in the same boat. At what point did you know that you needed to become incorporated? Like, at what point did your individual solo work and your contract work build up to where you needed to get that incorporation?
Well, because like I said, I took over from another company. Right. He just basically said, get your own name, and I'm going to transition all of my clients over here to you. So I basically started with like 10 clients or 12 clients, whatever it was. So I was basically hit the ground running. I didn't really have time to build up that whole thing. So I incorporated myself pretty quick, right then and there, because I didn't know what was going to happen, because I'd never done my own thing. And I didn't know if I was going to piss off these people or not. They like the old guy. Do they like me? That sort of thing.
The first time you ask yourself, are they going to sue me? Right. That's when you'll file your incorporation.
I'm the type of dude that likes to do preventative measures.
Yeah, no,
Sure,
and it hurts financially at first to set all this up, because you have to pay, like, you're in Hillsborough County, which is in Tampa. I have to pay $22 every 6 months for a business license. Mm-hmm. You have to pay those fees, and it hurts when you set up because you're having to pay that stuff. But it's stuff that it's initial pain, but it'll help you a lot in the long run.
Another thing too is you talked about LLC, and I actually am an LLC as well. A couple businesses that are LLCs, and there's been recent developments with LLCs where penetrating the corporate veil is something that LLCs can they can be gone through fairly quickly. So even though an LLC in Florida in Seminole County is $140 or something like that a year to keep up, going to the next S corp, maybe not a C corp but an S corp, is something that you might want to consider, because if you do a $10,000 job or if you do a $2,000 job and for whatever reason they feel you screwed up, they come after you, it's going to cost you more than $200 to defend yourself.
Right.
So,
and the difference between
Second part of that as well, it depends where you incorporate.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you incorporated in an LLC as a one person,
Or partnership.
right, yeah, because I mean, and
Well,
that's a whole other thing of, I mean, so you could get into with talk to an accountant, talk to somebody else about.
County and you got city. So in a city, you also may have to have a business use license.
Yeah, I'm not technically in city limits, so I don't have that.
But you may
yeah,
not need a business use license. You may not have to pay that.
yeah, you'll have a county tax basically.
Yeah,
That's about
right,
it.
right.
Yeah.
So, but it's something you can consider.
Another advantage to being an S corp, and I was in construction for years, I had a company. If you don't have to take all your income and pay Social Security of it.
Right.
You can pay yourself a salary. Say you take so much a month. At the end of the year, you can take a distribution. And that is classified similarly to a dividend.
Yep.
It still comes through in your personal taxes. The other thing is, if you want to put money in a simple IRA or something, you put money in your simple IRA. The money that you make, your company matches, is expense. So you're putting money in your pocket. You're matching to your IRA. And that's a big advantage to have with an S corp.
So
Yeah.
go back to your accountant.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yeah,
Not
talk
an
to your
accountant.
accountant.
Yeah. Yeah. What's up?
How mortgage and how to acquire new clients?
Get yourself out there. I don't do a lot of advertising. The only advertising I really do is here for DrupalCamp. I go out there with, I go to meetups, I talk to people, I ask for referrals. That's really the best way. You want to obviously start out with something, just one or two clients to start with if you can. If not, you could always try taking job boards, those job postings, that sort of thing, and just start from there. And who knows where it leads? It's hard to say. But I mean,
so standing 8 years later after committing as a guild, what's the biggest thing you wish you knew now, that you know now? Do you want or two?
that's hard. I guess to better learn the skill of what to charge people. Because when I first started out, I was thinking I kept my rates really low because I didn't have confidence in myself as a business that I could charge a higher rate. But then when you start getting further into it, you're like, what you're doing, and then you're like, why am I only charging this? If I had evaluated myself a little bit better, I would have been made more money, but been more stable and more comfortable with myself as a business, and then I maybe could have just thought about the idea of expanding to hiring other people or doing something else.
Use the principle of supply and demand. If you're not in demand, then your supply goes lower. But as you become more in demand, that's the hard thing, is increasing your rate, because at the beginning, people aren't, I got to make $50 an hour, I got to make $75 an hour, but you can't get it. So you go in, you get those gigs, but then as you become busy, it's the hardest thing is to increase your rate as you increase your competency. And how do you become competent? Well, if you're in demand, if you're busy, then take that little step and maybe increase your rate.
Yeah.
It's hard at the beginning though.
But and the other thing too is you can feel comfortable that you're getting all this work coming in, but it may not be coming in next month. So it's like that's why you get nervous about it. It's like you may have $10,000 in the bank, but you're still worried about, okay, is this how much that's the other thing I didn't really mention is I pay myself a salary every month. I make all this money coming in, but I don't hit all that money. I might have gotten a $5,000 check, but I'm still only pay myself, whatever it was every couple of weeks, because you need that money just in case work does dry up for a little bit. So it's better to save that and put that aside just in case you need it. If you have a 2-month period where something happens, you don't have any work coming in, you have that nest egg already there. Don't just spend or use all that money that's coming in right then and there.
How big of a problem is it to get content? Like websites require you need the photos and the information from these people you're working with.
It depends on who you're working with, but you set expectations when you're starting a site. You say, I'm going to do this, and I need you to provide this information for me, and you make it clear to clients what it is that they need to give you. If they don't give it to you, then their product, you have to tell them, I can't get this done until you give me this stuff. And that's going to happen. It happens with everybody. You know, if someone's on vacation, something happens, they don't get you the content, but you have to just kind of push them to make that, get as much as you can up front, and then just keep writing them throughout the process, saying, hey, I need you to send me this so I can do this step and this and this. And again, it goes back to communicating. If you're keeping people in the know of what's going on, the stats of the project, most people are happy to get you that information as soon as they can.
Kind of related to that is, do you require upfront payment or do you do back?
That's a good question. So I usually do a half deposit of the project. So if it's a $5,000 project, $2,500 up front. That way you know that you've got something, and it's you kind of set out as a good faith sort of thing. Like say, you know, I know that you're gonna you trust me to do your work, and I trust you to pay me. So let's meet in the middle. Give me a little bit here so I get some work done. And most people will be able to tell. I mean, you're a business. They know that you're basically one or two person shop. You know, they know that you have to pay your bills. So they should pay you. You know, that's usually not an unreasonable request. The other thing too, I forgot to mention this in my slideshow. When you send invoices to clients, I set 15 days on the due date. Not because I'm really expecting to get paid in 15 days, but it's nice to get paid in 15 days. So most businesses pay within 30 to 60 days at the most, but if you send something that's 15 days and they send that on to the accountant account's like, oh, well, I got to pay this right now, you might get your money sooner. You know, it doesn't hurt you to put that date, and then you just have to make sure you follow up, obviously, with them. Don't forget about invoices. You know, don't forget about money that you have out there. Get software to keep track, or a web service or something like that to keep track of what you've sent out for an invoice.
Do you charge for the discovery phase? Going in and figuring out what they want, or
I've done that like once or twice, but usually no, it's just part of the.
So you do that, and then once they agree, then you look for the
yeah. Then you kind of build that into that. You know, if you spend a couple hours, you build that into your quote, or you know, that sort of thing. Oh, go.
Well, so you had a couple of dry months at the end of the year, but like you don't build in your discovery time. What would be like an average billable week that's a decent rate that you feel comfortable with?
For like what I charge, or for
Yeah, well, how many billable hours a week is good for you?
It's not going to change.
40?
24/7, right?
Yeah, I mean.
With a life balance, right? You gotta pay.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in an hour, because I have to take my son to school and pick him up. I mean, I would say in a week I probably work 30, maybe 25, 30 hours a week.
So
So
you actually bill, or does that?
no, it's actual work that I'm doing myself. So in terms of billing, it just depends on what's going on in the project. I mean, I might be sitting there from 8 to 5 all day doing this. Yeah, but I mean, it just depends on how many hours. You know, you have to. I also do a lot of projects that are just fixed rate, flat rate. So I don't really break. I know the hours, but I don't always bill it. You know, think about it in a billing hour sort of cycle, sort of thing. But it just depends on the person and how you're doing it. You know, you're always. I'm probably making a mistake by not being an expert, but you know, you learn as you go. So, well, thank you.
Do you use online payment process, or you just do everything in the mail you check?
Yeah, I just have them mail me a check. It gets me out of the house. I just go to and when I have a PO box, so I just send everything there. So the business has a PO box, so I just go and check it, and it's like, you know, a 5-minute drive down from my house. So I go, get to see people in the day. It's good. So
And not always conversations with 5-year-olds.
exactly.
I was gonna ask you if you had any like online services that you can't live without. Like I know that there's like FreshBooks that I've heard about, and
Yeah, I've used FreshBooks.
It sounds like you kind of do it on your own, except for accounting.
Yeah, except for, well, I keep track of everything. I mean, I still do my own invoicing and stuff, but everything else, the accounting is the only person I really pay for, you know, service-wise, most of the time. I mean, developers and.
Just a tip about that, I'm using Huddle without an E at the end.com.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
So much tracking all the different projects.
What is it?
Cuddle, K-U-D-D.
Wow.
It's free and it's great.
That's like a project client management kind
Yes,
of
it's time management, and it helps me figure out everything, and at the end of the month I can show them exactly what we're working, whether it's support or development.
Yeah.
I was just going to say FreshBooks was really good. I used it for a while, but they only limited you to like 3 clients, I think. So I found ZipBooks. It's kind of the same interface and it's unlimited. Great. So,
But without an E at the end.
Anybody else? Well, thank you guys. Hopefully you got some info.